Hello, Coach Hugo here from Kenya Camp. Today I want to talk with you about running form or biomechanics. As you might know, I've been living in Kenya for more than 18 years and I've met runners from all over the world coming to train here. And also during my own running career, of course, I've met so many amateur runners, sub-elite, elite, world-class runners. We even had Sifan Hassan, multiple times Olympic champion, staying here. And I've been able to analyze running form of so many runners, and I also get asked a lot about running form. This is a subject that's on many people's mind, especially for amateur runners, to be honest. It's something that keeps people busy, something they want to improve, and at the same time it's a subject where I can say you find a lot of nonsense actually online, a lot of stuff that's not really true. So today I want to debunk some of the myths and discuss with you like what is actually important when it comes to running form. So there's four subjects I want to discuss about. Talk about the first one is foot strike. So where should you land, like on your rear foot, midfoot, or forefoot? Secondly, your cadence or frequency. Is a 180 is kind of the perfect cadence. Is that true? Third is the angle in your elbow. How should you keep your arms? And the fourth thing is about heel strike. I get asked a lot. People come here, they say, hey, I want to run like the Kenyans. I want to have that beautiful heel strike. Like when I'm running, my heel comes to my butt. So I want to talk about that as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is foot strike. How should we land? So what you find online is often that they advise that you have to land on your midfoot. That's like kind of the superior way to do it. And because heel strike would be like you're breaking yourself and you can cause injuries, and forefoot is probably also bad because you put more tension on your Achilles and on your calves. So the question is, of course, is this true? So when we look at running form, of course, the first thing we want to look at is how do the best runners in the world run, because this gives us an idea of what is actually the best way to run, right? So we are lucky that the World Athletics did great research back in 2017, where they went to the World Championships and they checked the running form, the biomechanics of all the best runners in the world in the 10K, steeplechase, marathon. So yeah, when you look at that, what's interesting is actually, so the first thing that I noticed when I read those documents is that you see that you have different elite runners running at exactly the same speed, but in different ways. So it's like everyone does it in their own way, right? So they don't all have the same cadence, frequency, foot pattern, elbow angle. So generally there are differences, but there are also some similarities as well. So when it comes to the foot strike, when we looked at the women's marathon, you saw that um, about was about equal ratio of mid foot strike and rear foot strike. So yeah, many of the ladies were landing on their midfoot or on their rear foot. And actually, when you look at all the participants in the women's marathon at the World Championships, majority were landing on the rear foot. When you looked at the top 8, it was about 50-50, with actually one of them landing on the forefoot. And that one was Edna Kiplagat, who is a multiple times world champion. So even though she was just one of them, you can't really say that landing on the forefoot is a wrong thing if it makes you a multiple times world champion, right? So yeah, that's kind of interesting to see. Among the men, among the top 8, 6 out of 8 were rear foot landers and 2 out of 8 were midfoot landers. So that shows you that this advice of you shouldn't land on your rear foot, it's not really based on science, right? When the best runners in the world, majority of them, at least during a marathon, land on their rear foot, then yeah, you can't say that's a bad thing to do. It's just one of the ways, that people run, and midfoot is probably just as fine as rear foot landing. Forefoot is a little bit less likely for marathon runners, I would say. When you look at the 800 and 1500 meter runners, you would see a lot more forefoot runners. And Edna Kiplagat came from the track. She was a shorter distance runner earlier on in her career, so it looks like she kind of maintained that same running form that she used to have. But yeah, she is the exception, but still, you know, basically we have to conclude that rear foot, midfoot, or forefoot, it's all fine as long as it doesn't give you complaints. If you land on your forefoot and you constantly have Achilles and calf issues, then I would say try to slightly adjust the way you land. Um, when it comes to rear foot landing, there's this idea that you would break yourself. But the thing is, it depends on how exactly you land. So, for example, when you look at my legs now, if I land on my rear foot, but I do that in front of my center of gravity, so in this way, then of course I'm slowing myself down because with every step I'm landing in front of my center of gravity. It's injury, yeah, risk. There's an injury risk there, and secondly, it's just not the fastest way of moving forward. And I see this sometimes with runners who feel like they want to go faster. So rather than putting more force into the ground, what they do is that they stretch out their leg, thinking that, oh, if I make bigger strides, that's how I'm going to run faster. But that's not how it works. We'll talk about that later. So if you land in front of your center of gravity, that's not a good thing. You don't want to do that. So you can check yourself, make a video of yourself while you're running. I've often done that here on the track. And then if you see yourself in slow motion, you can draw a line basically from your upper body down, and you can see if when you're landing, if you're landing in front of your center of gravity or not. If you're landing basically under yourself, then it's fine if you're landing on your rear foot. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you don't do it in front of yourself. So I would say that's the most important when it comes to foot strike. The second thing I want to discuss is the angle in your elbows. So for some reason, you find a lot of stuff online about that you have to have a 90-degree angle in your arms. Well, I can tell you nobody has a 90-degree angle in their elbows. Um, and if they do, they would look like a robot. You would like laugh at them because it looks so funny. I mean, imagine having this 90-degree angle all the time while you're running, right? And without moving it, right? So you constantly stay at 90 degrees. It doesn't make any sense, right? So even sprinters don't have that. But when you look at the long distance runners, we can go back to that research from World Athletics done at the World Championships from 2017. What you see is, first of all, that the angle in the arms and the elbows changes, right? So when it's behind, there's a little bit a bigger angle there compared with in front, right? So you want to keep your arms in a relaxed way, of course, and keeping them at a constant angle is not relaxed because you'll have to put tension in your arms to constantly keep it in the same angle, and it, like I said, it's completely looking robotic. um, so what happens actually is that behind you have a little bit of bigger angle, and then in front slightly less, bigger, less, bigger, less, like that. And so the actual angle, when they look at the world-class runners, is that when it's your arm is behind, it's roughly 60 degrees, but there's variation from 50 to 70, right? So it depends on the person. Some are more closer to 50, others closer to 70, but on average it was 60 degrees. And then here in front, it was closer to 50 degrees. Again, with variation from roughly 40 to 70 degrees. So, yeah, what you do with that, I would say just don't uh, throw away that idea of running with a 90-degree angle. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know where that idea came from. You want to keep your arms in a relaxed way, and you want to make sure that that angle slightly changes, which kind of happens automatically when you're running in a relaxed way, because that's just what you will automatically do, right? So yeah, this is what I can tell you about the angle in your elbows. It brings me to a third point, and that is that when scientists took a group of runners and first tested them and let them run, and then said, hey, let's change your cadence a bit. Now we're going to increase your cadence, or we're going to reduce your cadence. What happened? All of them ran worse. So, in other words, running at a cadence or a stride length that is unnatural for you makes you less efficient, right? Because that's not your stride, right? So, you don't want to consciously change your stride too much because it's not going to make you a better runner. Yeah. So, the other thing I can say about that is that when you look at world-class runners, again, this research done in 2017 at the World Championships, where they checked the biomechanics of the runners, we see that the cadence of elite runners kind of varies between 165 per minute and 200 or 206 per minute. So they looked at the 10,000 meter and the marathon, men and women. So roughly 165 to 206. And what each individual had, of course, depended on that particular person, their, their strengths, their weaknesses, their body length, their the length of their legs and their lower legs and strength of their Achilles tendon and everything, right? So yeah, those are different factors that determine if it's going to be 165 or 170 or 180 or 190 or even 205, like for example, someone like Mo Farah, right? So there was an even bigger difference in stride length. I would say frequency is still relatively, or cadence is still relatively the same among runners, but there's a much bigger difference in stride length also between amateurs and elite runners, right? So we see elite runners having a stride length of like 2 meters, elite marathon ladies having a stride length of around 1.5 meter, and it differs maybe between 1 meter 35 and 1 meter 65. Whereas many amateur runners have a stride length of less than a meter. And that's not necessarily because they have weak muscles. It could be, but yeah, like I said, you can have someone like Usain Bolt who has extremely, or had extremely strong muscles. He wouldn't run a marathon with long strides because, like I said, his aerobic system can't support that, right? So yeah, that's what you want to keep in mind. What I would say is that if you feel like your stride length is shorter, if you make smaller steps than other people that you're running with who are running at your speed, then it might be smart to start doing some gym work, which is anyway smart for almost every runner, right? So you want to work on your glutes, on your hamstrings, and make sure that you get enough strength to hit the ground in a hard way so that you can make bigger strides, right? Because making bigger strides is not about opening up your legs in some kind of way. It's about how much force are you able to put into the ground. If you hit the ground hard with your legs, you put a lot of force into the ground, you can basically fly a little further, right? So you can land 5 or 10 centimeters further, right? So you want to do the strength training. You want to do hill sprints. Hill sprints are a great way to improve your both like your frequency and your stride length. And just generally doing strides sometimes can help you with that. So like accelerations, running at a faster speed. All right, so those things like strength training, hill work, and strides are great ways of generally improving your biomechanics, but also getting more powerful and at the same time working on your cadence. But what you don't want to do is go into like a workout or a training session and say like, hey, I'm going to change my cadence today because I think it will make me faster. No, I would suggest that you just do the training and let these things happen in a natural way, by getting stronger, getting improving your threshold, improving your strength, and doing those strides. If you just train in the right way, this is a natural process, and you will get the stride length and the cadence that fits with you. The fourth thing I want to discuss is bringing your heel to your butt, and I get asked this question a lot. It's probably the most asked question by amateur runners here in Kenya. And I understand why. People are going to the track and they're seeing those Kenyans run, doing their speed works on the track. And people have this amazing running form where they, lift their knees high and their heel comes really close to their butt. And it looks really beautiful. So then people are like, hey, can I learn to run like that? So when you look at that, so there's a few things you want to consider, right? So first of all, they're running at a completely different speed, of course, than you do. So when you are running at maybe 5 or 6 or 7 minutes per kilometer, so we're talking about 8 to 9 minutes or so per mile, your running style should be different than when you're running at 3 minutes or faster per kilometer, right? So this is also why when you're looking at, for example, any major marathon and you see um, the elite runners in front, they don't have the same running form. They don't have the same like heel strike to their butt as compared with those who are running the 800 meters or the 1500 or the 5000 meters, right? So when the speed is faster, this is more likely to happen than when you're running slower. And it's not even about it being more likely. It's mostly about like what's the most efficient way of running, right? So if you take the form that you see that the Kenyans have on the track, and if you start doing that during your marathon, you would be probably completely exhausted after 1 or 2 kilometers. It just wouldn't be the most efficient way for you to run a quick time. So what I can say about that is that, this goes back a little bit to my previous video, number 3, about running cadence and running frequency, right? So if you compare amateur runners with elite runners, you see that across the board, people can have a cadence of 180. Right? Not everyone has that, but you have elite runners with a cadence of, let's say, 170 to 200, and you have amateur runners who have the same or very close to that cadence. But the big difference is the stride length, right? So elite runners can run 10K or full marathon with a stride length of 175 to 2 meters for the men, and for like 150 to 160 or so for the ladies. And for most amateur runners, that's not the case. And what happens here is that when you're running, you hit the ground very short. Like in a 10K for elite runners, it's about 15 hundredths of a second. In a marathon, men or women across the board, it's around 20 to 22 hundredths of a second. So basically, you hit the ground for a split second, and in that time, you want to put a lot of force into the ground, right? So you want to put a lot of force into the ground so that you can fly a little bit longer, so that you can have bigger strides. So you can imagine that when I'm running with my legs just basically under my body, I can't put a lot of force into the ground. So in order to put a lot of force into the ground, I have to lift my knee. I have to lift my knee and then hit the ground hard. Yeah, every step I do that. Lift my knee and hit the ground hard. So this is what elite runners do when they're running a 5K or 10K. And when you're doing that, when you're lifting your knee with a lot of speed, automatically your heel comes to your butt, right? So you have this nice, beautiful running form. It doesn't happen with everyone, but for most runners, that is the case. So it's purely kind of a result of running at a very high speed, because that's the way you get there. And that being said, it's not something you do consciously, right? So to get your heel up high, if you do that consciously, you have to contract your hamstrings, right? So you have to like contract your hamstrings to bring your heel up. If you're doing it in a conscious way, you're not doing what the elites are actually doing, right? Because they are not contracting their hamstrings in order to get their heels up. They are just moving their knee very fast forward, and the heels comes up. It's almost like physics, right? It's just like when you're swinging, like a ball on a rope or something. So when you're swinging that, of course, it has a certain way of going up and down, right? So it's the same way with your leg here. So if you move your knee forward, you're running at a very high speed, your foot comes up, it comes close to your body, right? So, and if you see the same elite runners going for an afternoon easy run at a speed that is maybe your marathon speed, um, they are probably running more or less like you. They are not lifting up their heels, right? So because that would be totally inefficient for them, and it wouldn't make any sense, right? So then they would have to do that kind of actively, and that's not how this works. It's like I said, it's almost physics. It's an automatic process. It happens automatically based on the speed that you have and bringing up your knee pretty high. And you have to bring up your knee high to hit the ground hard to be able to make bigger strides. So I hope that's clear. So for me, it doesn't make sense to do any like butt kicks during your warm up. I don't really see the point of that. You can do some high knees. High knee exercise can be good for learning to have a short ground contact, to kind of have that reactive impact on the ground. But something like doing butt kicks or something doesn't really make any sense, because like I said, it's not a conscious thing. You are not supposed to contract your hamstrings to bring your heels up, because it just doesn't help you. Okay, so that was it for today. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to learn more, please come and join us here at Kenya Camp. We can give you a 1 or 2 week amazing experience. getting to meet Kenyan elite runners and upcoming runners and learn a lot more from me and from our pacers and coaches and our whole team. We can teach you about how to get a winning mindset, or generally the best training rules and how to become a better runner. What is the secret of the Kenyans? Why are Kenyans dominating the running world? There's so much we can teach you. Running form, too much to mention. So if you're interested, please contact us here at Kenya Camp. We'll be happy to host you and coach you. Bye bye.